Welcome to the Chuck Shoot Podcast. My guest today is comedian Ted Alexandro. Ted has appeared on all the big talk shows, David Letterman, Conan O'Brien, Jimmy Kimmel, Craig Ferguson, The View even. He's also other TV work that he's done, Inside Amy Schumer, an episode of Louie, The Gaffigan Show, an episode of Oz. You remember that show, the HBO prison show? It's a dramatic role for him, I think. I have to check that out. He's had 2 half-hour specials on Comedy Central. He's performed all over the world. He's performed at Carnegie Hall, Madison Square Garden. So you get it. He's got a pretty good resume here. He's currently on the road opening for Jim Gaffigan, who he also does a YouTube show with called Teacher's Lounge. I watched a couple episodes of that. It's pretty funny. But I really became a fan of his when I just randomly found his stand-up bit on LaBamba, which I've posted to our Facebook page. I thought it was hilarious. I immediately became a fan of his, and he's got some really good bits besides that one as well. I really enjoyed this interview with him. I think he's another one of those smart comedians like Mike Kaplan, Dan Wilbur, and Liz Mealy, who I've had on, and so I think he also just happens to be a hell of a nice guy. So I think you guys will enjoy this, and here we go. Ted, yes, welcome to the Chuck Shoot Podcast. Thank you for being on.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, sir.
So, yeah, I think we have, I've had some guests that you actually might know. Dan Wilbur, Liz Mealy, Mike Kaplan. You know those 3, right?
Sure, absolutely. Love all 3 of those folks.
Yeah, they're all funny comedians. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this. So I guess we'll just start with your background. You grew up in Bellerose, Queens, right?
That's correct. Yep, Bellerose, Queens. It's kind of the Queens-Long Island border, but proud to say on the Queens side.
Nice. So I know you're a big basketball fan. Are you a Knicks fan then?
I am, sadly. Yeah, the Knicks are the team I grew up rooting for, and through the ups and downs, you know, we had the ups of like the Patrick Ewing, Pat Riley years, but it's been mostly downs in the last couple of decades.
Right, yeah. Well, you never know. I mean, I'm a Seahawks fan, so I don't know if you know football, but they've been terrible for years, and they won a Super Bowl, so you never know. Just keep rooting for that team. You never know when they'll win a championship. So
that's true, and the odds are better with basketball because it just takes like one guy to pretty much.
That's true. Yeah,
turn the tide.
Yeah, you got to have like the whole team for football, but so
right.
Yeah, so you're the second oldest of 5. Your parents were teachers, and you went to Catholic school. You had kind of a Catholic upbringing, am I right?
I did. I went to Catholic high school.
Yeah.
But K through 8, I was in public school. My parents were both public school teachers and advocates of public school education. And I had a great public school education up until 8th grade. And then my grandparents very generously, I don't know if it was purely generosity or they wanted us to go to a Catholic school. They paid for myself and my 5 siblings to go to St. Francis Prep, which was a good, Catholic school in the area. So I had the mix.
Did you have to be? Because I grew up Catholic too. Did you have to be an altar boy or do any of that stuff?
I did not. You know, strangely, maybe it worked in my favor, but they did not allow public school kids to become altar boys. I guess you had to go to the local Catholic elementary school to be in the program or whatever. So I think if it was available to me, I probably would have done it just because like my family was, we were always going to church and involved in whatever. But I was spared that. So I ended up doing that.
Yeah. But so there was comedy in your house. Your parents listened to like some stand-up records. Like that's kind of how you got involved in comedy. They listened to George Carlin and Flip Wilson and Woody Allen and stuff like that, right?
That's correct. Yeah. My parents had good and still do have. They have good senses of humor, good comedic taste. So this was back in the days of comedy albums, LPs. So I would put those on, sit in the living room, and listen either with siblings or alone. There was something very intimate about, and also just the tactile thing of taking a record out of its sleeve and looking at the cover art and listening. Yeah, especially as a kid, you're kind of allowed entree into this adult world. So that was always fun.
Yeah, and then there was a piano in the house, and that's when you started playing the the jazz piano, which you'd later major in that at college. But so I think a lot of people obviously know about your jazz piano background, but I don't know if a lot of people know about your rap group background you had with your brother, the Brotherly Love.
That's correct. Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
I sure can. It's funny you bring that up. I was just texting with legendary comedian Todd Barry.
Wow.
I was texting with Todd about that very thing. He asked me if I had ever played the Apollo in New York. And
right.
I replied, yes,
yeah.
I did it as a rapper.
But you got booed, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. Todd thought I was joking, but in fact, it's true. My brother and I had a rap group in the 80s and early 90s called Brotherly Love. My older brother Rich and I, and ill-fated ultimately, but we had a lot of fun throughout. We were going to public school in New York City at the advent of hip hop kind of being born. So we were just hearing all these kind of seminal rap groups, things that weren't even really being played on the radio.
Oh.
And again, getting back to that tactile thing of holding a record album in your hands. Like back then, the early rap records always had the instrumental on the B side.
Oh.
So if it was like Run DMC's, like Sucker MCs or whatever, the flip side would just be the instrumental. So you could kind of do your own thing. So that was how we started, and then we ultimately wound up at the amateur night at the Apollo, and we got booed off pretty quickly.
Right. So you think that because you made it through the first audition they said they put you in the show, and you think they did that maybe just so that you could get booed, or?
Yeah, looking back, we were too naive at the point, to realize we were like, wow, they put us right through. I guess we're good. And I think we were pretty good, but we weren't. I don't think we were like fated for to be like professional level. But yeah, so I think that definitely had something to do with it. The novelty of two white kids coming in to the Apollo rapping. At that point, this was like kind of. The Beastie Boys were kind of a thing at that point, but rap wasn't like and hip hop in general wasn't what it would become. So
sure.
It was a good opportunity to throw some chum to the sharks.
Gotcha. That's crazy. So. And then you ended up being a teacher, and I read that you got your first teaching gig at age 20 before you had your degree. You were a gym teacher. Like, did they emergency certify you, or because I think you had to have a teaching certificate, or at least in Arizona you do, in Washington.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I was somewhat alarmed to find out. This was like I took a year off after my sophomore year. I went to City College in Manhattan to study jazz piano the first 2 years, and then I took a year off. To study independently. I was studying one-on-one with this jazz pianist named Ray Gallen. So, that was like maybe 2, sometimes 3 days a week that I would meet with Ray. And I had a friend who was teaching English at a Catholic school in Queens, and they were looking for a gym teacher. So, I had done some musical theater with this guy, and he knew that I was taking the year off and that I was going to be studying teaching. But he's like, you don't need certification. They're just looking for somebody who can like wear a whistle around their neck. So I fit the bill, and before I knew it, it was a part-time thing. I think I was teaching like 2 or 3 days a week, but I was teaching kindergarten through 8th grade because I remember turning 21 at that job. Yeah, that I didn't have any business being in a classroom.
Interesting. So, and then you ended up majoring in. You went to Queens College, which. Did you know that Queens College had some like famous alumni like Jerry Seinfeld, Paul Simon, and I guess Ron Jeremy went there? I didn't know that either. But was that part of the reason you picked that school, or was it just because it's so close to you?
Yeah, no, it was more proximity. Like I had started at City College, and then once I was kind of going to transfer and get out of the music track. I figured, because that was like about an hour and a half commute from Queens into Manhattan. I would take like a bus and 2 trains.
Jeez.
So rather than do that, I said, let me switch into the education program and I'll go to Queens College, which was like a 20-minute drive. So it had more to do with that, although I later found out about all the famous alumni.
That's very cool. Yeah. So then you did the education thing, but you also were kind of working with the theater people, kind of, I don't know, I'm assuming like electives, or did you have like even a minor in theater? But you did that stuff, and that's kind of where you felt more at home. But was it more just that you did the education because you're like, well, I got to pay the bills somehow, right? Or
Yeah, I was a bit lost, to be honest. It was kind of like, what do I do now? You know, like after the jazz thing didn't work out, I knew I wanted to be in the arts. But I always kind of had this sense that I didn't want to be an acting or theater major. I don't know, it felt like impractical to me. Like I had done a lot of theater in high school, and both in school and like community theater. So I was like, why do I have to study this thing that I've just been doing like for many years? So I felt as though like the music track was more practical, like I'm practicing, I'm learning. But when that fell through, I was like, all right, you know, what do I do now? So I think I kind of instinctively went towards teaching, just coming from a family of teachers, and thought like, all right, let me figure, you know, at least this will be a degree in the meantime, while I figure out what the hell I'm going to do. And, you know, like I didn't really know like what was on the horizon as far as like, I knew I wanted to be in the arts, but I didn't know how that was going to happen.
So you did the sketch comedy, and then you did stand up, and you did that on the side for a while. You actually taught for 5 years in elementary. So at what point did you kind of say you pulled the plug on teaching and moved to comedy full time? Was there one thing that gave you confidence, or you just take a risk, or?
Yeah. You know, like you said, I had done sketch comedy at Queens College, and the guy who was kind of the founder of our sketch program there was a fellow student. His name was Hollis James. And he was just so funny and smart and motivated. I mean, he would write like a new sketch show every semester and put it up, you know, kind of single-handedly. I mean, he would cast it, he would direct it, write it, star in it. So he was just this dynamic presence that, you know, like as you mentioned, I was not in the theater program, but I had friends who were. Yeah. So it was one of those deals where, like, you know, education classes were both easy and relatively boring, I found them to be. So
yeah, sounds about right.
Any spare time I had, I wound up hanging around the theater department because those were really my people and my friends. So then, you know, I just kind of fell into that. I fell into Hollis's, he cast me in a sketch show. I wrote a couple of sketches that he put into the show. And that was really the pivoting point for me of realizing like, oh, wow, you know, I really love the writing, the whole process of, you know, up until that, I had been in stuff that I was, you know, whether it was musical theater or straight plays, I was doing somebody else's work. But with sketch, it was that moment of realizing, wow, you know, I can write stuff and collaborate with people. And so that really was a turning point.
Yeah. Okay. So then you quit, and then you ended up doing stand-up comedy full time. And it looks like you've been all over the place. Like, I mean, looking at these list of countries, I mean, what is it like doing stand-up in Kuwait or Singapore or Norway? I mean, I don't even, do these people speak English, or are you like performing for the troops, or what are those shows? How does that work?
Yeah, it's primarily for locals. Yeah, it's always in English, and I don't speak any other language, so it's always in English, and it's a combination, depending on where you are, of locals, of expats who are, you know, they could be Americans or they could be Brits, Australians, you know, just English speakers. They could be from anywhere that happen to be living in the particular country you're performing. So I've done some stuff for the troops in those various countries, but the lion's share of it was just regular comedy shows for people who live there.
Wow.
So yeah, it's great. I mean, what you realize over the years is just that any show that you're doing it's just another crowd, you know? I mean, you don't want to get too much in your head about, you know, psyching yourself out that you're in this country or that country or this city or that city. You know, you learn to kind of ask some questions, find out about where you are, and maybe throw in a little bit of stuff to break the ice. But yeah, after that, it's a group of people who are there to have a good time.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really cool. So then your home comedy club is that, would you say that's the Comedy Cellar?
Yeah. At this point, the Cellar is in New York, where I perform the most.
Yeah, I mean, I went there once. It was really cool. Some big names obviously drop in. I listened to a story that you told about how Robin Williams came by one time. That sounds really. That was like people should Google that because I want you just listen to the whole story. But who else has stopped by there where you were kind of starstruck or?
I mean, the Cellar is the kind of place that literally, anyone could pop in. Robin was certainly like the biggest legend who I ever crossed paths with. Seinfeld too, of course.
What's he like in
Chappelle.
person? Was he cordial to you or friendly or?
Yeah, he was nice. I mean, he has I think a certain amount of like his guard being up.
Sure.
Just because of how famous he is and how pretty much like anyone he encounters wants something from him in some way, whether it's a picture, a handshake, a moment. But once he realizes that you're a comedian, and now I've met him a handful of times.
Oh.
So we, at least know each other, I think by sight.
Okay.
But yeah, he's, once he knows you're a comedian, I think it removes a layer of that kind of guard or reserve.
Yeah, because I would still fanboy out even if I was a comedian. I feel like, and maybe more so because like he'd be such an inspiration. But I get you guys kind of have to like play it down a little bit when you're working because it's your job, right? So you can't.
Yeah, no, yes and no. I mean, you still get that. For me, anyway, it is exciting to work with someone who's that famous and established, and somebody that well respected too, who's created a legendary television show and written so much great stand up. So yeah, he's a guy. Sometimes like with famous people, like they're more famous than they are good. But with him, I feel like it's it's both.
Yeah, no,
a lot of respect.
Yeah, and you said Chappelle comes in too, because he's more of an. I thought he was more of an L.A. guy, but I guess they probably go both L.A. and New York, huh?
Well, Chappelle lives in, I think, outside of Dayton, in Ohio. Oh. So he's kind of like, he'll go to both. Yeah, but I mean, he came up through the New York scene, so I saw him a lot. Okay. Yeah. I think he started in D.C. as like a teenager, 14 years old, I think. Wow. But then made his way to New York maybe as an 18-year-old or something, 19.
Yeah.
So I saw him for most of his 20s, in New York, and now like when he pops in, of course it's a big event.
Sure.
He's attained legendary status too. So it's always cool to watch him work. Yeah.
So and then besides international shows, the Comedy Cellar, you've also done late night. You've done a lot of late night. You've done Letterman, Conan, Jimmy Kimmel. Do you have a favorite late night show to do, or what are the differences between all those? I'm a big Conan fan myself, but I've watched them all.
Yeah. Conan is a lot of fun actually, just because he's such a genuine guy and such a comedy fan, and I've done it a few times now. So both he and the staff, I know a couple of the writers too who are comedians. Laurie Kilmartin, Brian Kiley, both great comedians. Jimmy Pardo does the warm up, so I would see him. So it just feels there's a comfort level over the years because the staff, and Conan, Andy Richter. I did an episode of Jim Gaffigan's show with Andy Richter one time, so there's a comfort level there over the years. But the one that stands out the most is when I did Letterman the first time, just because that he was the icon for me.
Yeah.
So it was exciting to do that. It was kind of validation.
Yeah. So was it pretty nerve-wracking, or was it more energizing, or both, or?
Yeah, it's both. On the one hand, you've worked really hard and you feel confident and excited about your 5 minutes. But on the other hand, it's, you're going to be seen by millions of people in that one night, which is more than years worth of club work that people have, that you've been exposed to people.
Right.
So, it was thrilling and nerve-wracking. And I remember specifically like the moment when they, you're in the Ed Sullivan Theater and the dressing room is up on like the 4th or 5th floor.
Mm-hmm.
So you take the elevator up in the beginning of the night when you arrive, and there's different celebrities there. I think Natalie Portman might have been the other guest my first time.
That's a big one.
Yeah, so she was on it. She wasn't even on my floor. She was on a different floor. But then, like, when your set comes up, one of the production assistants comes up and gets you and takes you down in the elevator. And I just remember that walk of, like, to the elevator and then going down. And then when the elevator's doors open and you're on the floor of the theater, you hear the music, you're backstage, you hear Paul Schaefer and the band playing. It's a commercial break. You know that you're coming up soon. They walk you to the wings and they say, like, okay, 90 seconds. Okay, 1 minute, 30 seconds. So it's just like this build to, like, oh my God, and you can see Letterman sitting there at his desk. So that was pretty surreal.
That's got to be surreal, I would think.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around it. It almost feels like you're, out of body, like you're observing your life. Yeah.
So do you think that being on late night shows still has the same merit that it once did? Because, like, when I was a kid, there was only a couple ways to watch comedians, but now there's YouTube, and some of these clips go, you said, millions of people are going to see you. I just saw a Comedy Central clip of a comedian, probably nobody knows who she is, Amy Silverberg. It had 2.5 million views. She's never even been on a late night talk show. So do you think that the late night still has the merit in addition to these other ways, or what's your thought on that?
I think it has less of an impact, because as I was starting, it was still pretty much, the late night shows still had cachet and still could kind of make a career, in the early 90s, mid 90s. But then as cable, Comedy Central became bigger. Yeah. And so that had a big impact early in my career. But now at this point, like you said, I don't even think anybody honestly watches those shows in real time. If anything, you see the clip online after the fact. So that's where things really live. Yeah.
That's how I found you. I saw a clip that you had done. I think it was on Instagram, actually, but yeah, it was really good. And is there any late night shows left that you want to do that are on your bucket list? Like, would you want to, is the Tonight Show or SNL, or was Letterman kind of the number one for you?
Well, yeah, I think Letterman definitely had the most sentimental resonation for me, just because he was a guy that I grew up watching and admiring. So yeah, I mean, I've never done the Tonight Show. I didn't do it when Jay Leno hosted, and I haven't done it with Jimmy Fallon hosting. But of course I'd love to do it. But yeah, it's not that same kind of, like,
that's the only way to be noticed. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It doesn't hold the same appeal in terms of, like, as much as I think Jimmy Fallon's talented, he doesn't have that legendary allure that Letterman had for me as a starting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think back then, like I said, it was only a couple channels, and those guys, if you weren't on those shows, like, you probably weren't very well known. But now you can. Not to say those shows don't make comedians too, but like you said, they can watch the clips and YouTube and all that stuff. So, but you've also done some film and TV work. You were on Oz, and then, like you said, The Teacher's Lounge, and Inside Amy Schumer. You had a couple episodes of that. Do you like doing the film and TV work? I mean, it's clearly different from doing stand-up with a live audience, but I think it would be cool to see yourself on TV.
Oh yeah, it's always exciting, and most of the work that I've gotten has been through my stand-up. So, like, when I got Oz, it was because the writer-director, Tom Fontana, had seen me one night at Caroline's, and I just got a random phone call the next day. I didn't even know he was in the audience at Caroline's. Wow. And sure enough, he called me in for an audition, and I got cast in an episode. So that was a thrill. And then a lot of the stuff has come through, as you mentioned, fellow comedians. So Amy Schumer, Louis C.K., Jim Gaffigan, all my comedian friends who have shows have been, nice enough to bring me along.
Yeah, let's talk about Jim Gaffigan. So you guys have quite a relationship. You've done his TV show. And actually, you're on the road right now opening for him. So I was just curious what it's like when you guys hang out, because I think people probably picture it's this endless like laugh fest that where you guys are trying to one up each other and always trying to be funny. But for me, I tell me if I'm wrong, but I just, for some reason, I'm picturing you guys turning the comedy off and just having these like deep philosophical conversations. Am I correct?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, that's a lot of the times that is the case where, because we travel so much together. So whether it's on a plane or it can be, in a car driving to a gig, or it can be backstage, or it can be going out to dinner afterwards. We spend a lot of time together. So, we're both we both like a good time and we like joking around, but we do kind of delve into serious stuff of, whatever's going on in our lives, what's going on in the world, politics, all of that. Yeah. So it's fun because it's not just, I think like any good friendship, it's, you kind of you bounce around and cover a lot of different topics.
So you guys are pretty good friends then, huh?
Yeah. I mean, like Jim and I have known each other probably close to 20 years, came up through New York together. He was like, probably a few years ahead of me. He was more with like the class of comedians like Greg Giraldo and, maybe Dave Attell. Maybe Dave was even probably maybe a little bit ahead of those guys. But yeah, they were a little, maybe 4 years ahead of me.
Okay.
But then, we became friends just doing so many shows over the years in the New York scene. And then about maybe 5-6 years ago, Jim reached out and asked me if I wanted to open for him. And that was a huge deal. That kind of enabled me to get off the road in terms of just doing like comedy clubs.
Yeah.
So now, I still fill in my schedule, like any gaps that I have where I'm not working with Jim.
Yeah.
I try to fill in a weekend here, a weekend there.
Now, Jim, when you're opening for sorry, go on.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Oh. No, I was just going to ask, when you open for a big comedian like that, see, I didn't understand it. I was talking to a band the other day and they said like they're open up for Whitesnake and they said that they had to pay to get on that tour. But if you're opening for a comedian, I'm hoping the comedian pays you, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, I would not be doing the gig if I had to pay.
Yeah, I just thought that was weird. I don't know if that's every band, but I thought that was really like kind of shocking. That's why I kind of like doing these interviews because I like kind of seeing behind the curtain, like these kind of things that go on in the business and so it's interesting, right? So,
I've read something to that degree that for bands especially that's like an important way to build your fan base is to open for somebody,
right?
And then for whom like you maybe share a fan base. So yeah, but I was unaware that like paying to get in there. I mean, it makes sense.
I interviewed this band, this local band called the Black Moods, and they said that they opened for Whitesnake. I thought, oh, that's so cool. And they said, yeah, we had to pay to do that. I was like, what? Like, I guess it's to get notoriety. And they were saying that they were suggesting. I heard this a couple years ago. They were talking about the musical artists for the Super Bowl. They were considering making the artists pay to do the Super Bowl halftime show because it's such a big publicity thing. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Right.
Very
bizarre. Yeah. Nothing surprises me anymore. Right. All that kind of stuff. But
right. No, I know you're with your background and stuff. But I got to ask you about this. So this is the first joke. This is where I found you, and I was like, oh my! Like you immediately became one of my favorite comedians. The LaBamba joke. I love this joke because the way you crafted it, it just comes across like so honest. And I related to that because I also thought the lyrics were the same thing you did. You misinterpreted the lyrics. So did you kind of like craft that joke, or because it almost sounds like you're just telling the story, like just honestly, like this is exactly what happened, or did you kind of like tweak it and take out parts and change it up a little bit?
Yeah. Well, that was one of those things that it was like a real life experience, as I say in the joke, of just being at this bar where there was karaoke, and so I was not paying attention, but people are singing songs, whatever.
Yeah. And
then LaBamba comes on, and I see that it's not ba da da da, which is what I've been saying my whole life.
That's what I thought it was too.
Yeah. So it was just one of those experiences, and I tell comedians this, younger comedians, or just people who are writers or whatever. People who are pursuing something artistic. I say, like, anytime you have a visceral feeling or something happens where you're like kind of off your stride a little bit, just take note of it. Take note of the way you feel. Take note of like what's going on. So that was just an example of like finding that out and being like, what? My whole life I thought it was da 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 da. So then it just became a story, and like you said, I pretty much just tell exactly how it happened, and the story kind of evolved over the telling of it over years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that one. I also love your joke about how you're not in your sexual prime, and you compare that to Shaq's years on the Celtics. But I was just and that's a great analogy. But I was just wondering, was there any? Did you go through a list? Like, is there any deleted scenes from that one? Did you think of like other athletes or other like Burt Reynolds in his later years or Vince Neil, or did you have like a list, or why did you settled on Shaq? I mean, Shaq, I feel like that is perfect. I just wonder if you considered other athletes or actors or.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, because that's kind of the process with a lot of these types of things.
Yeah.
With that one, yeah, it was just again the visceral feeling of kind of going through, in my late 40s, early 50s, this, erectile dysfunction, and like being like, all right, well, how can I talk about it? How can I because I'm kind of the mind that unless it's like too much information or sharing too much of like my wife or our marriage or whatever, I of course I kind of make sure that she signs off on anything. But as far as my own life, I don't care about, like, I'll talk about pretty much anything. So that was a case of like, well, how can I talk about this kind of struggle of like getting older and being past my prime? And then I just thought of it, being a sports fan, I thought of it in terms of an athlete. It's always so stark to me when an athlete who is associated with one franchise for a long period of time plays for, another team at the end of their career, just looks totally out of place. So I just thought the image of Shaq in a Celtics jersey came to mind. And yeah, I don't even think, to be honest, that I don't think I tried any other analogies. I think that I just did that one, and it worked so well. And even if people aren't sports fans, I think they get it. And even if they just know that mostly he played for the Lakers with Kobe or whatever, it's still like, they can still follow along.
Yeah, no. And I think was he on the Celtics before or after the Suns? Because I went to a Suns game here and it was the same thing. He was just like walking up and down the court. I was like, what's going on with him? He's like, it's like he's not even trying. So that was a great analogy. Yeah.
That was his last stop, if I'm not mistaken, was the Celtics, because he kind of did almost like a tour of trying to latch on with a championship contender. He went from, I think, the Cavs. He played with LeBron. He went to the Suns with like Steve Nash and those guys, and then he went to the Celtics when they had like Paul Pierce and and maybe Kevin Garnett still, but they were at the end of their.
Yeah. I can't believe he played after the Suns. I thought he was like on his last legs when I saw him. So that's funny. So
yeah, I think he blew out his Achilles, and so a joke was born.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, comedy's definitely in 2020. It's changed a lot, like we talked about. But it's not just stand-up comedy anymore. You have to be adept at podcasts, social media, interacting with fans. Do you enjoy all the extracurriculars involved with stand-up, or if you had your choice, would you just do stand-up comedy full time and not have to worry about all the other stuff?
I do. I think I was a little slow to embrace like the podcasting and stuff. So, but now I've been doing my podcast, A Little Bit Me, for over a year. It's a weekly podcast, comes out every Tuesday, and I kind of do it solo for the first half or so, and then the second half is interviewing a comedian friend. I just call them up unannounced and just kind of see if I can surprise them with a call and catch up. So yeah, I've really kind of come to love that as well. And like you say, it's another element of a stand up and of, self-expression. And I think in some way, because I do it myself, it does help me, in terms of stand up too, because you're putting out all this extra content. I'm putting out another hour every week.
Right.
So, yeah, it just helps in your thought process and your clarity and self-expression.
Absolutely, yeah. And what about like the social media? Do you ever get frustrated with the social media? Because it seems like Instagram, especially, it's almost like unfairly competitive, or it's like, I don't know if it's superficial, because like you're really talented, you're hardworking stand-up comedian, you have really good bits on there, but like some girls they'll put up a picture of them in a bikini and then they get like 1 million followers, and I feel like, this isn't fair. Like I feel like I'm spinning my wheels trying to make this really good podcast, and then it's like I wish I could just put myself in the bikini and just get 1 million followers that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, you could drive yourself crazy with trying to, if you're looking through a lens of a meritocracy, because there's going to be an audience for all that kind of stuff that doesn't really have anything to do with what you're doing.
True. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I just try to stay focused on, like you said, putting out good content. In the last couple of years especially, I just realized, content is really what people are looking for, good content. And fortunately, over 25 years, I have good content that I'm proud of. So let me just keep putting out my jokes, like a minute at a time, 2 minutes at a time. And people share them, people tag their friends. So it's kind of an organic way of, building your audience because people are telling their friends about you. Exactly.
No, and your clips they'll get a ton of views and stuff. So besides your content, now you've listed like Dave Chappelle, Dave Attell, Janine Garofalo, Brian Regan, as modern day comedians that you're fans of. Who else may be kind of under the radar, up and coming that we should watch out for? Like who's big in the New York scene, but maybe not nationally yet?
There's a guy, Tim Dilllon, who is kind of a hurricane of comedy. He's really funny and just, he'll do characters, like videos of characters, like he'll do Meghan McCain and, he does, just all these various, he did a video where he was Jeffrey Epstein's, temple, he
I gotta see this.
Dressed up. Yeah.
I'll have to Google this.
Google Tim Dillon.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
Jeffrey
I feel like I
Temple.
might even follow him. Have you heard of?
He's a breath of fresh air.
Okay.
He's bizarre and very funny.
Have you heard of Amy Silverberg? I just discovered her. I thought she was
Amy Soderbergh.
Silverberg. There's a clip that she did. It has like 2.5 million views. Like she came out of nowhere. She's a professor at USC. Just posted this thing on Comedy Central. It has like 2.5 million views. I thought she was hilarious. I don't know if anyone's heard of her, but
nice. I'll have to check her out. I don't think I've seen her, but I'll check that out.
Okay. Speaking of, this is a terrible transition. Speaking of women, I guess you reconnected with. So your wife, she was your girlfriend before. You reconnected with her. You guys lost touch for like 10 years. Can you tell me the story with that? Like, I know you said you don't want to step on her privacy, but like who reached out to who in that scenario?
Oh yeah, no, I don't mind talking about that. Okay. I talked about it in my last special, actually.
A little bit.
So my wife and I, we had been introduced by Hollis James, who was my friend from Queens College, who I started in comedy with. So Hollis was DJing around New York City at the time, and he met my now wife, Madeline. Just when I think he was working at a bar, and he met Madeline and a friend of hers, and they were talking about comedy because Hollis and I were collaborating on some stuff. We were working on a pilot for Comedy Central at the time. So he mentioned that he was writing with me, and she was like, "No way! I love Ted Alexandro's comedy." So she was someone who knew about me. And that put her squarely in the minority at that point. And so when Hollis said, I'd like to introduce you to this girl that I met, I think you would like her. She's really nice and smart and funny, beautiful. So I was kind of skeptical because she was in college. So, there was an age difference. I was like 17 years older than she was. And
wow.
I was like, I'm not going to, I thought it was kind of ridiculous, to be honest. I'm like, I'm not going to, even though he was my best friend, and he was sincerely saying, I think you'll like her. She was going to FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. But I was like, I was skeptical, and I was like, I don't need to be dating a college girl. But then I went out to one of his next gigs and met her there, and it was really kind of love at first sight. We just hit it off, and we dated for about a year that first time. But then she was studying abroad and working abroad in Italy, and we broke up. And then about 10 years went by, and she texted me out of the blue that she was back in New York. And we kind of hit the ground running.
Nice. That's a great story.
Yeah.
That's a good story.
Yeah, it was just the right timing, I always loved her and kind of like never really completely like put her out of my heart. even though I, moved on and dated other people.
Mm-hmm.
So when she did text me, it was like the timing was right and I was ready, and so was she.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, that's
and now we have a son. I don't know if you know that.
No, I didn't know that.
A baby boy on Christmas Day.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's exciting.
Thank you.
So how did that change your life?
Oh man, it changes everything. It's just, you just wake up happy to see him and to watch him grow. He's only, about 7 weeks now, but, it's just, all the cliches that you hear. He's a joy to witness, just to be, to be next to him and to watch him grow and to be his father and to be his parents. We're having a great time. And
then, so you'll start probably doing some jokes about being a parent and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's starting. Because
that's like what you talked about, like how you just take things from your life. So as your life changes, your comedy changes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've never been afraid of that. Like some people are like kind of very protective of just being a certain thing, or I guess whatever works for you. But I've always been of the mindset of whatever's going on in my life is what I want to be talking about. So look out for the dad stuff.
That's very cool. What does she do? What does your wife do for work?
My wife is an artist, primarily a painter.
Really?
She's wonderfully creative and inspired. But yes, for the most part, that's her medium. She also is a psychic medium, so she does some work with like that and with spirit and
really
kind of sessions with kind of guiding people and working with folks who are going through stuff. So she's very creative and special and spiritual, and she also she does a lot of kind of graphic design as well and things of that nature.
Wow. That's a lot of different talents to have. That's amazing. Very cool.
And right now she's a mother. That's kind of the main gig.
That's a big job too. Yeah, definitely. So
right.
I asked for you to bring up a charity that I know you have a lot of causes that I did some research on that, and I know I don't like to talk politics, but you do a lot of good for the community and the world, and so there must be some charity that you are passionate about, or.
Yeah, I would say the two that I kind of work with most intimately or consistently kind of contribute to would be NAMI, National Alliance on Mental what's the I?
Illness?
Mental illness.
Mental illness, yeah.
Yeah, or forgetfulness.
Oh, that's a great one.
The National Alliance on Mental Illness. Yeah, NAMI does a lot of great work with folks who are suffering with mental illnesses, mood disorders. They've done a lot of great work throughout the country, and certainly personally with my family, I've had folks that have struggled and kind of had their own journeys with mental illness, and have kind of come out on the other side doing well, thanks to programs like NAMI. And then the other one is probably Doctors Without Borders. I contribute to them as well.
What is that? Is that just where they help people medical?
Those are doctors, people in medical profession who are kind of working around the world. Often in places that are war torn, or places that don't have proper facilities, places that are kind of have been, if there's economic destruction or otherwise, even physical destruction, they go there to help.
Yeah, it sounds like you were kind of raised that way to help people. I heard you talk in an interview about, you said that your parents would often like invite homeless people over for dinner and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say often, but it did happen.
Yeah.
Wow. People that were, if not homeless, kind of down on their luck, or people that were, in need of a meal or what have you. So it was it was definitely modeled for myself and my siblings to look out for the community.
That's very cool. Very cool. Well, you've had a great career so far, a lot of success, the stand-up, the TV work, your podcast, A Little Bit Me. You also have a stand-up special that I watched last night, actually. It's on YouTube. It's called Senior Class of Earth. And then you're currently on tour opening for Jim Gaffigan. Did I miss anything that you want to promote? Or?
Well, people can also find Teacher's Lounge on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. I watched some of that, too.
Yeah, that's a web series that Hollis James and I co-created where I play the music teacher and Hollis plays the janitor, and we're always just hanging out in the Teacher's Lounge, and then different comedians come in playing faculty, like Jim Gaffigan is the school nutritionist, and Todd Barry is the librarian, and Judy Gold is the gym teacher. So we have 10 episodes, and I think they're all funny.
Are you in all of them? Because
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Because I watched a couple. I watched the one with Jim Gaffigan where he had the wine or whatever last night. That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
And they're short. They're like 10 minutes or something.
Yeah. On the longer side, they're probably 8 minutes. On the shorter side, they could be 3 or 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We made them to be kind of quick hits. Like it usually opens with Hollis and I kind of just talking to each other, and then the other faculty member / comedian walks in. So yeah, that's typically the formula.
Awesome. Very cool. And you have any other TV shows or things that are you currently writing for stuff like that you might put out later?
Well, Hollis and I are collaborating on a screenplay project right now. So that's kind of what we're working on right now.
Okay.
Hold on one second. I'm at a hotel in St. Louis and someone's ringing the bell.
Oh.
Hi. Oh, thank you. They're bringing me chocolates and goodies.
Oh, fun.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'll let you get back to your chocolates and goodies. I want to thank you so much for coming on my little podcast here and slumming it with me. But
oh, no problem, Chuck.
I really appreciate it. So we'll put this out, and I'm excited to follow your career. Hopefully, keep putting out more of those little stand-up clips. I love them.
Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Okay, thank you so much, Ted.
You got it.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, so that wraps up another interview. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Check out Ted's website for tour dates, and you can follow both of us on Instagram. The link should be in the notes of the podcast, along with his charities. If you like this episode, let me know with a review, or you can share it to your Instagram story and tag me. I'd love to see that. You can also subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode, because I got some really great guests coming up. It's really fun to see the show grow, and we're getting some bigger and bigger names. And hopefully maybe some of you are fans of these people already. And if not, then hopefully you'll become a fan of them after hearing the interview. Well, thanks again for listening. I hope you have a great day.